Okay, everyone, you're very welcome to the AGM of the IGI 2019 to 2020. It's an unusual AGM. Thank you very much for joining us in this way. I think one of the upsides to COVID is that we have so many participants at the AGM. Normally there would be a bit fewer, and I'd like to welcome those of you who maybe haven't attended an AGM before. So we'll start off with a couple of housekeeping announcements. So this meeting is being recorded. It's going to be available on the website after the event. I'm just checking now to see if it definitely is recording. Yes, it is. And just a note to please mute your mics unless you're speaking, because with many participants you can get a good bit of background noise coming in. You will have the opportunity to participate in the meeting, to make comments or ask questions using the chat box in Zoom. So if you want to type in a question or make a comment, just open your chat box and you may either address everyone or the Institute of Geologists of Ireland, which is the chair. I should have said, by the way, the chair is myself and I'm the president of the IGI, Maria Glennon. And if you wish to speak, so instead of typing, you wish to actually speak in the meeting, please type floor into the chat box and you'll be given the floor. And I have a note here, if you're joining by phone, please identify yourself verbally if you wish to participate, but I don't think we have anyone joining by phone. Is that the case, Karen? Yeah, okay. Voting will be a little bit different as well. So we would normally vote by a majority show of hands, but I won't be able to clearly see everyone's hands in this setting. So we're going to vote via a poll function, and it's quite easy to use, and I'll explain that to you when we get to that point. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on my chat box as we go along. So if I'm looking into the distance or pausing for a sec, I'm just making sure that I can see what everyone is sharing. So the agenda will be the minutes of last year's meeting, the President's report by myself, the Secretary's report by Owen Wise, the Treasurer's report by John Hunt, the committee reports and other reports by various board members, specialist registers by Owen, and then the election of directors and any other business that anyone wishes to bring. So the minutes of the last AGM 2018 to 2019, I'm going to take these as read. There are a couple of actions there though, which I will address. So there was a question on whether the EFG costs in 2019 were included, or whether the EFG costs in 2019 included the 2018 and the 2019 costs, and yes, that is the case. And then the final action was for the membership to be consulted on the draft strategy, and that has been carried out, and the strategy has been published this time last year. So the President's report from myself, I suppose it's been a year of real highs and lows. I had the pleasure of celebrating the IGI's 20th anniversary conference back in October last year. And then really within a few short months, just everything changed with COVID. And we really understand the huge personal and professional challenges that that's posed to our membership. And I'd just like to reiterate that the IGI is here to support YEA's members, and we really want to understand the particular challenges that you're going through, and especially if you have issues with CPD returns or fees, do engage with us, and we'll be able to try and support you as best we can on that. But I just mainly want to acknowledge all the people who helped the IGI keep running smoothly this year. First of all, the executive, Cian O'Hora as Vice President, Owen Wise as Secretary, and John Hunt as Treasurer, and our outgoing board member, Ed Slowey. I really want to thank them for keeping going during the year, not just the 20th anniversary conference, which was a really big commitment from the board, but also dealing with the COVID-related challenges on top of all the usual board jobs during the year. And I want to thank Ed in particular for his huge commitment to the number of initiatives that he's been involved with over the last 3 years on the board, in particular the strategy working group, the minerals information working group, and the 20th anniversary working group. And he also recently organised an online meeting, an online seminar with Mike Milnarchuk there during the summer. So we want to wish Ed well in his future endeavours, and we're really pleased that he's going to stay on as chair of the minerals information working group, until that work is concluded. So thank you very much, Ed, for that. I'd also like to acknowledge the ongoing work of our ordinary board members, Bill Shepherd, Suzanne Tynan, Paul McDermott, Alison Orr, and Ciara Bannon. Karen Lee Ibbotson, we want to thank really sincerely. Karen Lee is a huge support to the IGI. She really keeps the show on the road. She looks after all the administrative and communications aspects of the organisation. And we're really grateful for you, Karen, and your support. I don't know how we would do what we do without you. Eamon Kelly is our webmaster who keeps our website up and running. And I'd like to thank all of our member volunteers who give their time on working groups and committees, in particular the standing committees of the Validation Committee, the Ethics Committee and the Disciplinary Committee. And I should add in the Nominations Committee to that too. And all of our member volunteers who give their time as representatives of the IGI on PERC, EFG and NSAI. And of course our sponsoring bodies, the IMQS, the GAI, the Geotechnical Society of Ireland, the IAG and the IAH Irish Group. So just to look over a few highlights from the year. Back in October 2019, we celebrated our 20th anniversary conference and we launched our new strategy for the next 6 years. And by all accounts was a fantastic day with, I suppose, highs and lows in it, insofar as we got to meet all of our colleagues and do lots of networking, but we also tackled some very difficult issues which are facing our profession at the moment. In particular, the climate emergency and the role of petroleum geologists going forward, and also the public perception issues that are prevalent at the moment with exploration and mining activity. So I think some very constructive actions have emerged out of that, and Paul McDermott is going to tell us a bit more about the conference and how it went, and we'll also hear from the two working groups that emerged out of that conference too. I want to thank everyone who made the day a success and who came along, and we would hope to do another big conference like that maybe once every few years, maybe not this year or next year. Another highlight was the presentation of the Medal of Honor Award in 2019 to Dr. John Ashton at the 20th anniversary conference. And we were delighted to have him back for an evening lecture in January, where he talked about historical to recent exploration at Beleaden Tar Mines, which by all accounts was a fascinating account of how the deposit was developed and a look to the future as well. I want to thank John for that. And I'd like to offer our congratulations to our Medal of Honor recipient 2020, who is Dr. Eileen Doyle. Eileen is our founding member, founding president, and our first female recipient of this award. And we're looking forward to presenting this to Eileen at a date when it's safe for us all to get together and have a nice social event and social evening. Some other highlights, after the 20th anniversary conference, we held an aggregates course, and this was our last in-person course before COVID hit in March. It took us a little while to upscale into online delivery for our courses and events, but we got it running in June. And we started off with Shane Carey delivering a QGIS course, followed by David McNamara on geothermal and Dr. Mike Milnarchik on social license to operate for mining. So we've received good feedback on those, but we're always open to how we might do things better. And we're, for the foreseeable future, going to continue to deliver our events online. We're also very active on the consultation front. We examined a number of consultations and we made responses in conjunction with input from our members and from other geoscience organisations on the Waste Action Plan for Circular Economy and for Ireland's long-term strategy on greenhouse gas emissions reduction. So those are on our website and all our consultation responses will be published so you can see. And if you hear about a consultation that you'd like the IGI to examine, we'd be very happy to do so. There is a new government portal which publishes all government consultations, so we do keep an eye on that. We continued our external representation on PERC, EFG, that's the European Federation of Geologists, the NSAI, the National Standards Authority of Ireland, and we are delighted to join the newly convened GSNI Science Advisory Committee. and we took part in their science strategy workshop back earlier this year. So I'll hand over to Owen now for the Secretary's report.
Okay, thanks a million, Mairead. So first of all, I'd just like to read out some apologies from some of our members who wanted to be here but couldn't make it. Claire Clifford, Ed Slowey, Barry Balding, Kevin Cullen, Robbie Meehan, Charlie Carlisle, Peter O'Connor and Jim Hodgson. So they all send their apologies. We'll move on to the next one then, please, Mairead. So the board met on 13 occasions during the 2019-2020 term. We fortunately didn't have to have any EGMs, and we'd just like to thank ARUP for providing meeting rooms for our activities prior to the pandemic in March. So that's that one. We're in quite a healthy state. Our current membership is 307 members, which is a net gain of 28 members over last year. Of those, 206 are professional members. 180 of those are EFG members. We have 59 members in training, which is a net gain of 17. 14 retired members, so that's gone up by 2. 5 associate members and 23 student members, so that's gone up by 1. Over the year, we had 3 PGO members and 1 MIT who were delisted. 3 PGO members elected to resign their membership. 2 MITs resigned their memberships, and 4 PGOs altered their membership status or category. 1 associate member was reinstated as a PGO, and 1 student member has progressed on to be a member in training. I'll hand over now to John for the Treasurer's report.
There we go. That's fine. So yeah, on to the numbers. And I know as geoscientists, we're interested in the results rather than too much in the detail, particularly where numbers are concerned. So, but this is your standard Treasurer's report, so we don't need to be flippant about it. But in 2019, we took in €52,500, and that was over the course of conferences, Eurojol memberships, other members, including applications, and our PGO members as well. So the bulk of that obviously comes from our PGO members. Slightly down on 2018 in our PGO members, but that has gone up again this year. So in comparison to the income from 2018 in general, slightly down on that. For the next slide, please. Right. And so our expenditure analysis there, we spent slightly less than 2018, 51,000 as opposed to 55,000. And much of this was taken up in 2019 with the conference, the celebrations, which is very much money well spent. We also have an EFG cost as a licensing body and for membership for our Eurojol subscriptions. Our staff costs 10,000. There's always some website and computing updating of those, and that generally comes in about the same every year. Our insurance, 1,080. I'm not sure about 2018. I don't have the information from that, unfortunately. But I can try and dig it out if anybody's overly interested in that. The legal and professional fees from 2018 were more associated with the GDPR compliance. So we didn't have those in 2019 because we'd gone through that process. And then we moved through the rent of our premises in Merrion Square, and that has also gone down this year because we're sort of Johnny, rather than being in there full time, we just have it when we need it. So we pay sort of much more nominal rent on that. The sponsorship was a little bit down last year, and we are aiming to fix that as well, even with our challenging times that we have. and our audit fees had taken a jump from 2018, and they continue to be at that price. So we're sort of looking and shopping around on that at present as well. And then the bank charges, we're also looking at, so they were 1,342 versus 1,442, so they're in and around the same price. We're trying to look at some a better system than PayPal that sort of charges on a percentage basis for that for ourselves. So we are now, if we can move to the next slide there, please. Right, please. So in total, for 2019, income 52,500 as mentioned, expenditure 51,662, and so surplus of 866. You'll see that it has dramatically reduced from, say, 2017, where we had a significant amount of income from and profit from some of the European, the EFG projects that we're engaged with. A loss in 2018 and into surplus again. So we're probably in a healthier position now, in that we're producing maybe just a slight surplus rather than massive surpluses, because we are a voluntary organisation, a charity, so we have to be careful about that. So just that next slide, please, Mairead. So this is our cash position at present. You can see that number at the bottom there, the net funds of almost 95,000 euro, and much of that is in both the current account and savings account. The PayPal we transfer every now and again to keep that balance down, as most members pay through PayPal with their subscriptions. So the account is healthy in some respects and not healthy in others. So we will be asking, I suppose we are asking members all the time for ideas on what we can fund, what we can do as a group. So there are various ideas flying around for that as well. And we talked earlier in the year about our savings account, essentially that rainy day account. And we do feel that certainly that we are in that rainy day at present, I suppose, in terms of COVID and our restrictions and the likes, and how can we best use our funds to benefit our members during this time. So next slide, please, Mairead. So budget versus income. So it balances out pretty well, as you see from our surplus in 2019. So our budget for both of them, all of them balance out reasonably well. In that our income, our other income and the likes for 2019 versus our budget is reasonably in balance. And if you could just go to the final slide in the Treasurer's report, please, Mairead. And this is a bit of a breakdown on our budget versus expenditure for 2019. So our expenditure, you can see there was slightly less than our budget, but I think we do a pretty good job on the budget in terms of estimating what our spend would be. The only shortfall on that is the sponsorship, and that sometimes is not through lack of trying. We're not trying to hoard money. We're certainly trying to give the benefit to our members all the time. So I just want to say that if it's a transparent organisation that we're in. If people have questions about the budget or want further breakdowns, don't hesitate to contact us. We can provide that at any stage. It's an open book there. For our members, I might iterate, not reiterate. It's not for general consumption, but certainly for our members, there's no secret there.
Thanks very much, John. So one of the functions of the AGM is for the members to accept the books of accounts for the previous years. So I'll propose that they would be accepted if somebody wants to second that.
Mairead, I'll second that. John Clifford.
Thank you, John.
Sorry, Mairead.
Yep.
I don't have an objection, but just in the Treasurer's report, in the past, we certainly always used the word surplus rather than profit. And I think we should revert to using surplus as a description of any excess income that we received.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point, given that we're a not-for-profit organisation, so we can amend that. Thanks, Jerry. Okay, so we'll move on to committees and other reports. So this will be delivered by myself and a number of different board members, so people will be jumping in and out. So I'll start off with the validation committee. The chair is Morgan Burke, and the validation committee members are Deirdre Lewis, Dave Blaney, Sean Finley, John Kelly, Cecil Shine, and Kena Hora. By all accounts, they had a very busy year with 5 interview sessions since the last AGM. They admitted 17 new PGOs and 27 new MITs. And the most recent intake was actually undertaken over Zoom. So 10 candidates were interviewed over Zoom. So I'm really grateful for them to have completed such a lot of work during that last year. Is Cian there? Does Cian want to take the contaminated land working group?
Sure. Hi everyone. Yeah, so the contaminated land working group are Claire Clifford, Owen Wise, and myself. We met twice during the year, and we haven't met since March. We have a number of volunteers who are keen to join, and we're going to look to revitalise it during the winter months and hopefully come up with some initiatives and training for members in the new year.
Thanks, Cian. On the ethics and disciplinary committees, on the disciplinary committee, we have Nick O'Neill, Eileen Doyle, and Deirdre Lewis. On the ethics committee, we have Matthew Parks, Jonathan Durham, and John Ashton. Thankfully, they weren't busy during the year. There were no complaints adjudicated on during the last year, and we thank the committee members for agreeing to serve for another term. Strategy working group I'll also cover, seeing as Ed wasn't able to join us today. So we assembled a strategy working group last year in order to come up with a new strategy for the organisation for the next 6-year period. We had great collaboration and input both from members and from non-members in other relevant organisations, including Gareth Jones, Catherine Buckley, Maeve Boland, Nick O'Neill, Nuria Manzanis, Amy Grennan, Jim Hodgson, Kuhn Verbruggen, Henning Moe, and myself. And the work of this working group was completed with the publication of the strategy at the 20th anniversary conference in October 2020. So
2019, perhaps?
2019, yeah. Just all the years are just blended into one now. So I'm going to hand over to Suzanne Tynan now for the EIAR working group report.
Thanks, Mairead. So our working group was convened in early 2019, and we've met a number of times, and we've progressed certain parts of it, lots of it written. We've made some good contacts and consulted with a number of the organisations, Transport for Ireland, GSI, EPA, and we're hoping to be completed by the end of 2020. That's it.
Thanks, Suzanne. And I'll pass over to Bill for the CPT working group report.
Still muted.
Yep, just unmute yourself there, Bill.
Can you hear me?
I can. Thanks, Bill.
Okay, right. So this was the second year, 2019, since the new template came out for the CPT returns. So special thanks to Alison and Owen for assisting in going through more than 230 returns to verify that everything was in good order. That resulted in about 38 sort of being queried, and again, great assistance in this area from Karen, and you saw that not too many people have been delisted, so a few people deserve to give Karen a clap on the back that she persisted with battling to find the correct contacts for them. They had sort of moved job and things like that. So hopefully next year that will not be a major source of frustration for Karen. A few issues of note were using out-of-date templates. The participation classification, some people still believe that just means participating in a conference rather than actually participating in the organizing of it. Given the sort of wide range of professional profile that geologists have now, a few CPDs, it was not clear if someone didn't know the person personally, if one of the three of us didn't know them, then it didn't necessarily make clear on a return that the person had actually got a geological role. So that's something just to note in doing your return, that you make sure it's blatantly obvious that you are in a geological role. And I think this is an issue we will be looking at in the coming year, just to resolve that. And it's all more or less to help people, particularly higher management levels, etc., where as you go through your career, your CPDRs are less focused on geology and more on the role you're having. And given, you know, we're really, it's terrific that geology has got a very broad profile now. We want that to continue. We need to look at making it clear how diverse the roles that can be accredited in CPD are, and I think we need to have a look at that in the next year. And one of the interesting things in reviewing these is that if you tend to realize that people tend to underestimate their CPD credit again and again, and a number of things. I think retired and part-time people underestimate the range of activities that they probably are undertaking, but don't appreciate them as CPD relevant. Quite a number of people I noticed had done presentations but not included the preparation time. Other members, well, some members take the CPD filling in very seriously, others less so, and they'd be inclined, once they hit the 45 hours, to sort of roll back, and it might be 46 or 7, but they won't delve deeply into their 12 months after that. And equally, some will just go to covering the 3-year average 45 years. And both those are risky pursuits, and given the year we've had, it demonstrates that it's a good idea to keep ahead. Again, there's the issue of making it very clear to people in the more diverse roles what is a CPDR and what isn't. And I look forward to sort of looking at that a bit closely in the coming year. Just one other thing, we do on the forms look for people's training desires and needs. So we end up with a vast array of training priorities. So it generally is computing and management and finance are the top requested categories, with a wide range of geology, general and specific as well. I do feel that this is a good idea in principle. It's much more useful probably in November to hunt people's preference so we can actually plan for the following year once we get some feedback. The CPD forms come in right up to for 6 or 9 months of the year, and so we need that information at the end of each year to plan the next one. So I think we'll look at that probably in the next board meeting. So I'll leave it there.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Bill. So seeing as Ed isn't here today, I'm going to cover out the, oh, we've just got a message from Deirdre. Yeah, so Deirdre Lewis would like to ask a question. So would you like to turn on your camera and mic, Deirdre?
Yeah, I have them on, I think. Marie, thanks very much. Just a comment as much as anything on Bill's work, and I commend the CPD committee. It's a thankless job having to go through all those returns, and well done to you all. Just more of a general comment, I guess, on Bill referred to the broad nature of geology, and perhaps some people may have difficulty filling out what I'm going to call pure geology in terms of their CPD. And it's in the context of, I attended the Royal Irish Academy Geography and Geosciences Committee yesterday. And I represent IGI sort of in a loose way on that. And it's very clear that the our academic colleagues are very anxious, both in Ireland and Northern Ireland and in the UK, that more and more we're seeing a decline in the number of people taking up geology as a subject at university level. And it links back now to the, I suppose, minimization of physical geography in the junior cert cycle, and then obviously that has not gone into leaving cert, and right through into the choices that students make generally after transition year in terms of their future career. So there's an issue there, and I think we're going to see it more and more, that if we are going to recruit members in the future, they're more likely to be a broader earth science graduate, or you know, these sort of courses that don't necessarily define geology as in the core, you know, the core subjects. So it's just flagging it. I think we will see in years to come, we'll have a more dilute form of geoscientists than maybe the older style that we have. People like myself who did geology as a pure subject. So anyway, it just may spill over into the CPD mechanism over the coming years. So thank you.
Thanks, Deirdre. I think that's something that we're really dealing with already. We've seen that we've had to give a little bit more attention to applications, membership applications from certain sectors, insofar as they were maybe drifting a little bit from what we would expect in a CPD return and in an application form. So we've given that a little bit of attention this year, and we've published new application guidelines, which will hopefully give people a clearer impression of what the content of their application form is expected to be, given that we accredit geoscientists and geologists. But yeah, thanks for flagging that. And the decline in third level applicants is something that's of concern to us. We're kind of watching it, and hopefully we can do something about it. We know that there's a number of initiatives going on countrywide, particularly in the Geological Survey, with trying to support junior cycle geography teachers in the Republic of Ireland to try and bolster their physical geography teaching, and hopefully that will translate into interest to enter third level, the third level cycle as well. And of course, you know, there's the wider public perception issues, which I believe in the UK and in Europe are really causing a lack of interest or a reduction of interest for prospective students to enter into third level geoscience courses. So I'm hoping that, you know, some of the activities that we're going to be undertaking in the next while on public engagement is going to help that, at least in Ireland. But we do want to stay kind of plugged into that issue and monitor it and see what we can do to try and stop that decline or prevent it in some way. So just back to the Minerals Information Working Group. So after the 20th anniversary conference, we put out a call for volunteers to volunteer their time on a Minerals Information Working Group. And we had a fantastic response, not just from the mineral exploration and mining sector, but across the board, from environment, regulation, hydrogeology as well. And I think that's great that this approach is going to be multidisciplinary. So the outputs of the group will be very balanced and multidisciplinary and open and transparent. And the group has met a number of times. Just, I suppose, to go back to the reason why it was formed, both as part of the strategy review and as part of the 20th anniversary conference, members made it clear to us that they wanted us to engage more in outreach and public engagement on mineral exploration and mining, just because it is suffering such a poor public perception at the moment, and there's a lot of misinformation out there in the general public and in political spheres. So we wanted to tackle that in a planned and proactive way. So the group is currently focusing on a series of information brochures, fact sheets, outputs. I say outputs because we've now collated a large body of information and we need to edit it and boil it down and get some assistance from public relations experts and graphic designers in terms of how we're actually going to serve it out to our key audiences. So where we're at now is we've had a huge amount of work done by all the subgroups. I think there's between 5 and 6 subgroups tackling a different theme, such as mineral exploration, environmental regulation, mining practices. And it's really focused on some of the themes where we see the worst kind of misinformation or perception problems on the sector in Ireland. So to accompany that suite of information, there will be a program of dissemination. So there will be a significant spend and dedication of resources from the IGI board onto this. So we're looking forward to seeing those outputs come together. It is a fairly significant task and we're really grateful for everyone who's put their time into this. We're just assembling an implementation group at the moment, which is a small subset of the wider group. So if anyone else wants to be involved with that, we'd welcome your assistance with editing and just generally organising all this material that we've collected. So I'll hand over to Cian for the Petroleum Geologist Working Group.
Thanks, Mairead. Yeah, so the second working group that came from the anniversary event was the Petroleum Geologist Working Group. We've met once during the summer, I think it was June or July, and then our second meeting is scheduled for tomorrow evening. So we have a good mix of people from the petroleum and energy backgrounds. I think most of them are non-members, but obviously there's members in there too. So there's people from industry, obviously, academia. We also have Susan Morris, who is based in Canada, but is very active in the Canadian Geologists Society, and also Dave McNamara, who sits on the petroleum subgroup with the GeolSoc, who have recently changed to the energy subgroup. And then Rick obviously working in geothermal as well. So we're very much at the early stage of the journey and discussing terms of reference and initiatives to work on. Really, the purpose of the group is to support petroleum energy geologists, either people who are looking to study it or who are starting their career or late in their career, and really to assist in challenges associated with energy transition and I suppose issues that they're facing with their profession and employment. So to date, there's been some good discussions and information transfers. Like we, as our membership, we don't have a huge amount of people working in the sector, but there are obviously in Canada and the UK, there are a lot of people who have worked in the sector. So we're trying to gather relevant info and disseminate it to our own members to help support them. Yeah, that's really it. And I'm looking forward to the meeting tomorrow. Hopefully we'll have 2 before the end of the year and decide on some initiatives to bring forward.
Thanks, Cian. And I'm going to pass over to Suzanne for the EGI Working Group.
Thanks, Mairead. So the EGI, or Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Working Group, arose out of the strategy document where we felt that the IGI needed to develop some initiatives to increase essentially the participation and advancement of minorities in the geosciences, since we are a rather homogenous group. So in order to do that, we've been pursuing a number of initiatives. We've made contact with a lot of groupings or institutions who are essentially better at this than we are. So we've developed links with the Open Door Initiative, who are basically a grouping which have been put together of industry people in order to try and remove some of the barriers to getting into employment that are experienced by some of the minority groupings. We've also made contact with the Irish Refugee Council, with WITS, which is Women in Technology and Science Ireland, and we are about to sponsor them. And we've also made contact with a number of university access programs. The purpose of the contacting the university access programs is that we would like to support a student from a minority grouping to allow them to access some sort of geoscience degree program that they might not otherwise be able to do. So I think that's a very important initiative, and we're basically in the process of trying to find a good fit university program which would achieve our objectives in terms of supporting a person in the geosciences, potentially over a full degree program. We are now also a sponsoring partner of ICRAG's new Equality, Diversity and Inclusion project. They have a survey which is ongoing at the moment, which is about people's experiences relating to equality or not. And Karen would have sent you out an email, and we'd encourage people to fill that in if they have. It takes about 8 minutes, so it's not too time consuming. We have this year, since obviously because of COVID, we've had a lot of online presentations rather than the usual in a room ones. So we have this year asked our speakers whether they'd like to make a contribution to a charity, and we've encouraged them to contribute to a charity which kind of falls under our, equality and diversity remit. So we have, in lieu of providing hospitality to everybody on the night, our speakers have asked us to contribute to Pride in STEM, water aid and groundwater relief. We're also looking at providing unconscious bias training to our members. There are a number of potential providers. We think it's a really important thing to do, and it also falls in under that elusive ethics category in CPD of how one might fill that in. And basically we have more or less decided on a provider, and we will be providing that almost certainly online later on in the year as well. So that's it. Back to you, Mairead.
Thanks, Suzanne. And over to Paul on the 20th anniversary working group.
Okay, lovely, thank you. If I break up a bit, let me know and I'll stop my video because my Wi-Fi isn't brilliant. And for all I know, the kids are down using the broadband as well. The 20th anniversary event, I'm delighted to say that one thing it can't be accused of was boring. We had a significant range of feedback from the conference, from excellent to disappointing. But I think one thing people must admit that it engaged everybody, challenged us, and it did start a significant amount of debate. And even from that debate, we've had a lot of direct positive outcomes, and you've heard of two of them there from the Minerals Working Group and the Petroleum Working Group. It wasn't just a conference, it was also a celebration of the fact that we were 20 years in existence, which is a great achievement. It was an opportunity to thank our founding board for the work they put in to get it up and running. We got to honour our Medal of Honour winner, John Ashton. We got to look to the future with our new strategy. And probably more importantly, it was a very good networking event for us as members of the IGI. And little were we to know that we wouldn't get many more opportunities in the near future. And finally, I would like to thank a few people, the committee team who did a fantastic job, and Karen and Mairead, I'll give you a big shout out there. Advantage, who were a massive help to us in organising it. The speakers and the chairs who gave of their time and their expertise, which was excellent. For all the members who attended, there was a number of events on that week, and we still had a very good attendance at it. And lastly, I would like to thank all our sponsors. They were very generous. In particular, I'd give a shout out to the EPA, our goal sponsor, and Jonathan, I see you there. Thank you very much for getting that. And I won't forget our silver sponsor, because I might get in trouble, EMD, Exploration and Mining Division. And Jerry Viling is there beside you. You can give her a pat on the back on that one as well. So yes, that was the 20th anniversary.
Thanks, Paul. And over to Karen Lee for communications.
Unmute myself. Probably not a whole lot to say on this one, really. Just, I suppose, that the office continues to be the first point of contact for members and, importantly, for prospective members, which we're seeing a lot more of, certainly in the last year and a half. And I don't really know why that is, but the interest in joining the IGI has very much increased. So at any stage, if anybody has any, I suppose, any need to contact a board member, the first thing to do really is to send in an email, and I can send you in the right direction or deal with it myself if I can. The weekly members bulletin continues to go out, certainly at this time of year, and I suppose in the early stages of the lockdown, the bulletins were very sparse. There was very little to include. So I do always really appreciate if anybody is aware of any, send it in to me. And don't necessarily assume I'll be aware of an event. So please do send it in if you can. We continue to work on the website and to try and ensure that the calendar is up to date so that it reflects not only our own events, but I suppose geo events across the whole community, from, you know, organisations like the IAH, Geoscience Ireland, you know, whatever event is going on, we try and get it up there. We're trying, I suppose, to increase our presence on social media, which is an ongoing challenge for me, as I don't feel I'm terribly adept at it. But our followers are certainly increasing. I suppose we're keen to try and increase the amount of original content we post. So if anybody out there is, I suppose, experienced in posting geoscience content and would like to get in touch to maybe offer some advice, that would be very much appreciated. The outreach activities, I think they were mentioned earlier. I suppose the big one is the Young Scientist exhibition, which took place in January. Now, obviously, since then, outreach activities have really been curtailed due to the COVID lockdown. But interestingly, we had a few of our more senior members take opportunities this year to promote the IGI when they were delivering talks to different student groups around the country. I know Deirdre Lewis spoke to, I think it was an SEG chapter at one point. Jim Hodgson spoke down to, I think it was the 3rd and 4th year geology students down in UCC. And every time somebody does that, we generally do pick up a few inquiries that might turn into maybe 1 or 2 new members. And certainly in the last, I think the big one that brought in a lot of student members, I think it was John Clifford, or possibly John Ashton, was one of the Johns who spoke to the Trinity students about 2 years ago. And all of a sudden that brought us in, I think, about 10 or 12 members. And most of those, they were 3rd year members or 3rd year students at the time. They've now progressed to, I suppose, graduates, and which is very gratifying to see. Several of them have now progressed to membership and training. So it's great to see that we're actually getting members at the student stage, and that hopefully they'll stay with us then throughout their careers. Then in terms of exhibitions and conferences, we were at the Atlantic Ireland 2019 event back last October, I think, Geoscience Ireland, and then the IGRM in, I think that was in February, early March. So I think that's really it from the office point of view. But just as I say, continue to send in anything you're aware of to be included in the bulletins. I do really appreciate it. Okay, thanks Mairead.
Okay, and just a quick word from me on the mentor scheme. So we established this scheme back in 2016, and to date we have 14 members on the mentor list. There's 4 female and 10 males, so the gender balance still isn't great there. So we'd very much encourage senior females or females at any career stage to put themselves forward as mentors. Age isn't necessarily a barrier to it. You can really help someone you know, achieve their own objectives by just listening and being a structured mentor. There's 7 members that we know of on the mentee list, so people who've actually sought out mentors and who've entered into a mentor relationship. Again, not as much female participation, so only 1 female and 6 males. So we'd encourage everyone to consider being both a mentor and a mentee. And we did provide a bit of training on this in the first 2 years that we established the scheme, but unfortunately interest hasn't been such since then that we can actually run the course again. Numbers were very low. So if you feel that it's something you'd like to do again, do let us know and we can think about trying to put on that course again. And just to say that it's a real mix of private and public sector, and there's representation from across the geodisciplines as well. So on that mentor list, you can see the person's name, qualifications, and the discipline that they work in. So that's how people decide on who they'd like to approach to become their mentor. And just a reminder as well that we do have access to the European Federation of Geologists European-wide mentor scheme. They often put out calls for participants in that. So we'd encourage you to consider that as well if you'd like that kind of European perspective. Just a word on the Irish Geoscience Network, which is going from strength to strength. It was established in 2012, and the objective really was to get together all of the geological related organisations across the country. So we had the annual meeting in Marion Square back in February with 34, just have to move box so I can see the number, yeah, 34 organisations represented, which is fantastic. And we just discuss anything that's of mutual interest or that's happening of a year. So we discussed last year GSI's 175 anniversary, which is this year, and we've the celebrations for that have begun already. We discussed the formation of the Heads of Geoscience Groups Forum, or the unfortunately named HOGS Group, which I'll mention in a sec. And also things like geoscience education, research, outreach and collaborations, and the government legislative programme and consultations. So they're kind of the ongoing issues that are discussed in that forum. So I mentioned the HOGS Group, and this was established in 2019, and it's convened by the IGI president every 2 months. So since then, the group has been fairly active. It's met 6 times. And the objective of it is to increase the response of the geoscience sector to consultations and to cooperate on those responses where appropriate, and also to cooperate in the coordination of public relations activities, and just to provide a forum for any other topical matter that might be coming up. So some things that we discussed during the year were public perception problems of minerals and mining, Brexit, equality and diversity initiatives. So that's a forum with the main geoscience bodies who are concerned with public engagement in Ireland. Okay, so over to John Hunt again for the EFG report.
Thanks, Mairead. So last year in May, we had our summer council meeting. Not quite our summer, but certainly it was summer in Delft. And the IGI past President Marie Fleming, she's the chair of the Registration Authority, the EFG. So so Marie, Owen and myself attended. And the focus of this meeting was it's the ongoing status of geology and how it's taught in secondary schools across the region, across Europe. Now it's very much a there's a whole mishmash of how it's taught, and particularly in the likes of Greece, where they've brought in legislation that that geoscience, or it's been agreed that geoscience or geology would be taught in secondary schools. And perhaps in primary schools as well, but it's it raises the question that that if it's going to be taught, then it needs to be taught by geologists and not somebody who isn't au fait with the subject. So there was some debate over that. There's Winter Council meeting in Brussels. I unfortunately missed that one. Owen and Marie attended, and the focus of that meeting was on the new Green Deal. And the public perception of geologists, which fits in very well with our strategy and our outreach. So there is certainly alignment between the EFG and ourselves and what we're all trying to achieve. The summer council meeting in June, even though it was a virtual meeting, went reasonably well. It's probably a little bit shorter than usual, without any harm being done. And obviously the discussions at that time were dominated by COVID-19 of going on the impacts on industry, on the geoscience industry in particular. And it's, I suppose you could have another discussion tomorrow on the same thing. So it's very much a movable feast and an evolving situation all the time for all. And it would be interesting to see at this year's Winter Council meeting in Brussels, whether that actually goes ahead in Brussels or will probably go online again. But where we're at now, I'd certainly like to think that we don't spend all the meeting discussing its impacts, and we do get onto some actual some discussions around geosciences, focused on the theme of the meeting. So we're not currently involved in any EU funding projects. We've sort of stepped away from that for now. We just, with all of our own strategy and the things that we'd like to achieve in the IGI, we just simply don't have the time to, as volunteers, to devote to EU funded projects, and we don't have the administrative capacity to do this. Unfortunate as that may be, we can't do everything, essentially. Is there another slide there, Mairead? Not sure.
Yep.
Ah, yes, the mutual recognition agreements. So we have 6 mutual recognition agreements, and some of them are formal, some of them are informal. But certainly the formal ones: the Australian Institute of Mining Metallurgy, Geoscientists Canada, EAG, European Association of Geoscientists and Engineers, who also have a branch in Ireland, South African Institute of Mining and Metallurgy, the Geological Society of London, of course, and we're still working to formalise our agreement with the AIPG with Aaron Johnson. He is working from his side. We're going through a review process at the moment to see how we've done our side of it, I suppose, and to see how we align. And if there are anything that is outstanding that would prevent us from having a formal agreement. So that is a slow burner. It's difficult to get engagement from the folks in the US, and Aaron is trying his best from his side as well. But we're working towards it, and we hope we'll have something before the end of the year.
Thanks, John. Back to Paul for PERC.
Okay, as most of you will know, PERC is the Pan-European Reserves and Resources Reporting Committee, and it is constituted to promote the best practice in public reporting of exploration results, mineral resources and reserves, and we're the CRISCO National Reporting Organization for Europe. So we are. During the year, well, first of all, our 4 IGI PERC representatives are Ed Sides, who's the secretary, who puts in a massive amount of work. Myself, Paul Gordon, and this year Andy Bowden has stepped down and been replaced by Job Landsbrook. And I'd like to thank Andy. He doesn't seem to be on the call, but I thank him for his work over the number of years. Key features through the year would be that the Fennoscandian and the Hibernian members' qualifications have been added to the SAMRAC, the South African list for RPOs. In January of this year, the PERC strategic plan was approved. Some key goals within that would be the development of a relationship with the securities regulatory authorities of Europe, and the Financial Committee is looking into that and trying to advance that, and also to explore the links between public reporting and a greater awareness of societal requirements. And then our standard update committee is also going to have a look at that. And we would hope that in the next version of the PERC standard that there would be something in there on the environmental and social and governance. The code continues to increase. New Bulletin have made the decision to switch from JORC to the PERC code, or the PERC standard, which also includes the reporting from Bulletin Tara Mines. And it's also becoming significantly popular within the Dimension Stone. And actually it's where probably PERC is very strong and gives a lot of help, I'd say, to Crisco on this level. If members are interested in more on it, Ed Sides have put together an excellent summary in the annual report, annual review, and you can find out more there. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much, Paul. Yeah, I think you've covered this out. There was actually a second slide there, just the key activities. I think you've mentioned most of those. Okay. So on to specialist registers. This was due to be Owen's section, but I've just received a message there from him to say that he suffered a power cut. So something had to go wrong. So is Owen on the line there?
I'm here, but I don't know what quality my my signal will be or anything. I'll run through it quickly. The ROGEP, or Register of Ground Engineering Professionals, is, I think
We're losing you there a little bit, Owen. Do you want me to fly through it? And if I forget anything, you can jump in then and remind me.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine. Thanks, Mairead. Apologies.
Yeah, no problem at all. So the ROGEP, the Register of Ground Engineering Professionals, the agreement was signed with Engineers Ireland to set up an Irish branch, and so far 8 Engineers Ireland members have been nominated for registration, and there's 3 IGI nominations currently being processed. And there's 3 grades of registrant in that: Registered Ground Engineering Professional, Engineering Specialist, and Engineering Advisor. On the Pyrite Register, it's a register of persons deemed qualified, trained and experienced in respect of carrying out the geological aspects of work related to pyrite, as described in the relevant standards. We currently have 13 persons on the register, which is great. And the CPT returns of those people are specifically monitored to ensure competency. And then we had the aggregate standards workshop in support of that earlier on this year. Then on the Contaminated Land Register, so this is the register of persons who meet the competency requirements as set out in the EPA Code of Practice for environmental risk assessment for unregulated waste disposal sites. And that's going from strength to strength with 41 registered members. And just a note there from Owen that it's important to note that all registers, for all registered, that your position on the register is dependent on being a member in good standing. So your fees and CPD submitted on time, otherwise you won't get your letter from the IGI confirming that you're on that register. So we're on to the election of directors. The candidates for executive directors for the next term are myself, Mairead Lennon as president, Cian O'Hora as vice president, John Hunt as treasurer, and Owen Wise as secretary. The candidates for non-executive directors are existing board members Bill Shepherd, Suzanne Tynan, Paul McDermott, Dr. Alison Orr, Ciara Bannon, and our new nomination, Dr. Siobhan Power. So I'm going to attempt to start a vote by poll. I'd like to remind you that only PGOs can vote, so other member categories like student, MIT, associate, and retired are non-voting members. So please only vote if you're a PGO. We don't have phone attendees, so I'll just try and start the poll now. So I've launched the poll here, and the motion to vote on is, do you vote to elect the directors as nominated? And I'm going to give you 30 seconds to cast your vote on that. Okay, so 30 seconds has gone by there and 20 of you out of the 26 have voted. So I'll just give you another few seconds in case anyone wants to complete their vote. Okay, so that's 1 minute gone by, so I'm going to end the poll. And I'm going to share the results. So the results are yes, 95%, no, 5%. So seeing as it's a majority vote, I'm going to deem all the directors as nominated elected. So congratulations to everyone on their re-election, and congratulations to Dr. Siobhan Power on joining the board as our newest board member. Okay, so we've actually reached the end of the meeting now. I'd like to open the floor to any other business. If anyone has any comment or question to make, please type it in the box or just indicate by turning on your mic. Yep, John Clifford, please.
Thank you, Mairead. First of all, Mairead, I'd like to congratulate you and your team for an excellent overview of the activities of the IGI this year. It really was a very good presentation. Compliments to everybody. I think it's fair to say that the IGI has successfully transitioned through the teenage years and now has grown to be a young adult. So now let's see if we can get more performance and more delivery. So that is really one of the issues that I would like to raise. I'd like to see the incoming board inject a greater degree of urgency into the whole area of public engagement and aspects of the strategy. In particular, obviously, I'd be interested in seeing more delivery and faster delivery of output from the minerals and the petroleum working groups. I think it's essential that we gain some visibility in both of those sectors, and that we be seen to be communicating with both the public and the policymakers. So let's get those fact sheets out sooner rather than later. I think that would be one of the things that I would be stressing. The other thing that I would just like to say is that I'm the industry advisor on the NUI SEG student chapter, and which is currently based out of UCD. And they're doing a fantastic job, but they do need support. In particular, if there's any people on this Zoom meeting that would like to give a talk to the students, it's all virtual at the moment. Certainly, we would be very happy for you to communicate with us. So, other than that, great job, and congratulations to the incoming board, and let's up the output. Thanks.
Thanks very much, John. That will certainly be our priority. I suppose it's been a challenging season for all the volunteers involved in those particular groups, but I'm really thankful and pleased with the outputs or the progress they've made towards the outputs to date, and the board will be doing everything it can to support the work of those groups, and crucially then to actually disseminate the outputs and work upon them. So that will be our priority in the next while. And certainly with outreach to particular groups, we were looking to assemble a calendar of representation at events, and unfortunately it's fallen apart a bit this year in terms of physical events, and as organizations kind of gear up to do more online things, we're hoping to get more involved again and step up our sponsorship, step up our representation. So we'd be delighted to reach out to those relevant groups like the SEG chapter. We'd be delighted to do that. Anybody else like to contribute?
Can you hear me, Mairead?
Jerry?
Yes, please. I'd just like to again congratulate you and the rest of the board on a really informative AGM.
Thanks, Jerry. I see you're enjoying your retirement there.
I'd just like to comment on 2 recent newspaper articles which appeared. One by Emer, I think Emer might still be listening, and also Eamon Grennan. I just wonder, would it be possible for the IGI to, as it were, publicise these when they appear? And that would obviously need the actual authors to, in the first instance, let the IGI know that they've had letters published. Thanks.
Thanks, Jerry. Okay, if there isn't anything else, we'll close the meeting and thank everyone very much for their participation in tonight's event, and thanks to the board for their efforts in putting together the presentation and the meeting today. And we hope to see you all again very soon, hopefully in person sooner rather than later, but we'll do our best. Thanks very much, everybody.